Loki Laufeyson first appeared in 1962's Journey into Mystery number 85. Loki was created by Violet Barclair, Chu Hing, Pierce Rice, Don Rico, Mike Sikowski, Pete Tomlinson, Stan Lee, Larry Lieber, and Jack Kirby. Loki's backstory would play out during the events of Thor Volume 3, number 12, when adult Loki traveled back to the past to discover what happened to him as a child. Loki is the son of Laufey the Frost Giant King, but was adopted by Odin after Loki tricked both Laufey and Odin into engaging each other in battle. Odin defeated Laufey and decided to take pity on the young Loki and raise him alongside his son, Thor. As Loki grew older, he would become jealous of his adopted brother Thor. His jealousy would stem from Thor's physical capabilities, his relationship with Lady Sif, and Loki's belief that Thor was the favored son of Odin. This resulted in Loki getting himself into trouble on multiple occasions, such as in Loki Volume 2, Number 1, where he took his anger out on Lady Sif by cutting her hair. We see this play out in Episode 4 of Season 1 of Loki, when Loki is trapped in the time loop. Another larger-scale incident played out in the events of Loki Volume 2, Number 2, where Loki stabbed the blind god Hoder using Heimdall's sword. In order to remedy this situation, Loki and his mother traveled to meet with Hela in order to persuade her to return the god from the dead. Hela agreed, but only if everyone in the 9 realms would shed a tear for the fallen god. Everyone in the 9 realms shed a tear for Hoder, except for Loki. Loki tried to evade punishment for his actions, but was ultimately captured by Thor in Loki Volume 2, Number 4, where he was bound to a rock while a venomous serpent dripped poison on his face as a punishment. Similarly to Thor, Loki has been around for centuries, so before we talk about his interactions with the Avengers, let's talk about some of the situations Loki found himself in over the years. During the events of Ruins of Ravencroft, Dracula Number 1, we find out that Loki was briefly an inmate at the Ravencroft Institute in 1933, but he eventually escaped and turned the prison uniforms into straitjackets as a prank. Loki also faced the wrath of many gods and goddesses during this time. In Venus Number 6, we find out that Loki angered Zeus, who banished him to Hades. During his time in the underworld, Loki started referring to himself as Satan and even spawned a child who he named the Son of Satan. Throughout the events of Venus Number 7 to Number 9, Loki would attempt to persuade Venus, the earthly name of Aphrodite, to fall in love with him and travel down to the underworld while he was captured there. In Venus Number 9, Thor was sent to fetch Loki from the underworld. As punishment for his actions, he was trapped in an Asgardian tree where he would only be freed when someone shed a tear for him. Loki would first cause issues for Thor on Earth in Journey into Mystery Number 85, where he used illusions as an attempt to trick Thor into putting down Mjolnir and wielding the hammer himself. Thor was ultimately able to stop Loki and return him to Asgard. A few other notable instances of Loki causing havoc on Earth include Journey into Mystery Number 88, where he hypnotized Jane Foster and forced her to fight Thor, Journey into Mystery Number 91, where he lent his powers to Sondu the Supernatural in order to fight Thor, Journey into Mystery Number 92, where he used his magic to steal Mjolnir from Thor, Journey into Mystery Number 94, where he briefly caused Thor to turn evil, Journey into Mystery 97, where he releases a volcanic man to attack Earth, and Journey into Mystery Number 114, where he sent the Absorbing Man to attack Thor. Loki's most well-known failed scheme came in Avengers Number 1, where he hypnotized the Hulk to cause chaos, which resulted in Iron Man, Thor, Ant-Man, and the Wasp to team up and ultimately form the Avengers. Loki would die for the first time during the events of Mighty Thor Number 432, where Thor killed Loki following his planning of the Axe of Vengeance, a strategic attack by multiple villains in an attempt to defeat the Avengers and other heroes. Eventually, Loki was brought back to life in Mighty Thor Number 440, thanks to manipulation of the time stream. Thor Volume 2, Number 80 to 85 saw the events of Ragnarok, the Asgardian cycle of birth, life, and death, play out. During Ragnarok, Loki led the enemies of Asgard in battle against the Asgardians. While Thor was eventually able to break the cycle, all Asgardians, including Loki, perished. Thor would attempt to resurrect the fallen Asgardians in Thor Volume 3, Number 5, where he discovered that Loki had been reincarnated as a female. Loki's final comic book appearance would take place during the events of Siege Number 1 to Number 4, where Loki manipulated Norman Osborn into leading his Avengers and Hammer into battle against Asgard. One hero Loki did not prepare for was the hero Sentry, but more specifically, his evil alter ego, Void. Void unleashed all of his powers, which resulted in the complete destruction of Asgard. Loki's final words to Thor were, "I'm sorry, brother." Loki would eventually be reincarnated as Kid Loki in Loki, Agent of Asgard, number 13. But it is established that Kid Loki is not the same as the original Loki, who died at the hands of the Void. Loki is a frost giant with Asgardian attributes, which include superhuman strength, durability, a healing factor, stamina, and longevity. Loki is also a skilled sorcerer and is able to use telekinesis, cast illusions, teleport, and create mystical energy blasts and force field. Loki also holds genius-level intellect and is a skilled combatant. Loki does not have a go-to weapon, which he uses frequently, but his scepter can be used to command people and objects. In relation to his on-screen counterpart, Loki has a much more prominent role in the MCU than he does in the comics, despite being featured in many different stories throughout the years. One major difference is that Loki of the comics is a pure villain who rarely ever makes concessions and helps Thor, while Loki in the MCU went from being the first main villain of the Avengers to becoming more of an anti-hero. If there is one aspect of the comics that the MCU hit right on the head, it is Loki being the cause of the Avengers assembling. Avengers number 1 is also referenced in the film when Loki hypnotizes the Incredible Hulk while on the S.H.I.E.L.D. helicarrier. The Loki Disney Plus series is something that takes very little inspiration from the comics. While the Time Variance Authority is a group that appears in the Marvel comics, they do not interact with Loki, and Loki never joins the group as a soldier or worker. The most comic-accurate thing from the series is Sylvie, the female version of Loki. While we've not seen many of Loki's early adventures play out in the MCU, we might have a chance to get some references to them when Loki Season 2 drops later this year. Loki has been one of the most important characters in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. From causing Earth's mightiest heroes to assemble, to protecting the sacred timeline, Loki might be a pest, but he is truly our favorite pest. Thank you all for watching MCU Comic Origins Loki. I hope you all enjoyed this episode. I know that Loki is one of the more favorite villains of MCU fans around the globe, so I hope you all got to get a little bit of insight into the history of this character, especially because, again, the most important movie perhaps in all of the MCU, the first Avengers film, was actually fairly heavily based on the comics itself. So with that being said, there will be another episode releasing next week. I hope you all like, comment, subscribe, and share this video with a friend, and I will see you all in the next episode.